Hey guys, Fat Man Outdoors. Today, let's talk about making sinkers and saving them greenbacks. All right, now there's a few different components that we're going to use when we're making these lead sinkers. Of course, number one thing is going to be your mold. All right, and like I said, that's this one here. You see how that's made right there? That's an egg sinker mold. Now what you do with this mold, when you close it up, you take this rod right here, and on whichever side of this you're going to be molding, one side molds bigger sinkers than the other one, you take this rod, stick it right in that hole, okay? And after you stick it in that hole, then you'll fill in the lead through these ports right here. Right down through there. You'll run the lead right down into those holes, and then give it just a second, maybe, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 seconds, and you can pull this rod out and lay that to the side. And then when you open up your sinker mold, you'll have a line of sinkers in there made with holes through them. And that's what that rod does. It makes the holes. Very important. You'll also find that rods like this are used in probably the second most widely used sinker for catfishermen is the no-roll, or a lot of people call them river sinkers. Well, these use exact same thing in purpose as this. They just use 3 short pins, and they slide right down through there, so that when you close the mold up, you'll slide them right down through those holes, and then you'll fill the mold through these larger holes and let it set for a second, and then you'll just pull those pins out, all 3 of them, let it wait for just a minute, open your mold up, and then you'll have 3 sinkers on the inside, the shape of those 3, 4, and 5 ounce sinkers. Now I also have some that are larger, that'll go all the way up to 8 ounce, and they're useful. I like the no-roll sinkers better than I do even the egg sinkers. Even if I'm suspend drifting or suspend fishing, I don't know why, I do. It doesn't matter which one you use. I mean, they both work, do the exact same purpose. When you're suspend fishing, it's just to get it down there. So that's all that matters. But my personal preference, I use those more than the egg sinkers. To me, they work a little better for me, because I guess they're easier to handle than trying to keep up with the egg sinker. And if you drop an egg sinker in the boat and there's waves or boats moving around, or you're trying to walk around the boat, you're going to have to chase it. But if you drop that no-roll sinker, it's going to do exactly what it says. It's not going to roll. It's going to be right there where you dropped it. So that's my reason. Now there's another type of no-roll sinker. It's called a donut sinker, okay? Now in these donut sinkers, if you look right there, there is a little round notch, okay? That little round notch is for these little rings to go in. All right, you'll put these little rings, I'll take one out of the pack for you to see, and we'll put one, just lay it in there so you can see how that works. Bear with me here, fat fingers, fat man, so you know how that works. All right, so you'll lay them in there just like that. See how that's laid in there? And then once you lay all 3 of them in there, and you'll close up the mold, all right, and then you'll fill the mold through these spouts. Fill all the way, the sprue will be all the way up level with the top of that. Then once you get them full, then what you'll do is you'll let it set for, again, I like to let them set about 4 or 5 seconds. It don't take long. This lead hardens up past the point of being liquid real quick. It takes it a lot longer than that for it to make where you can touch it. So don't think you can grab hold of it as soon as you take it out of there, because if you do, that'll be the end of your day making sinkers, I'll promise you. So you'll just open the mold up after you do that, and take my little thing out. Then what I do is, most time it'll just fall out, but if they don't fall out, tap it just a little bit on the bench, and they'll fall right out. Okay, now we also have another set of sinkers that are popular today that do exactly the same thing but they take a little bit smaller of an eyelet, but they do exactly the same thing, and that's stick weights. Okay. Now I got little eyelets to fit these, and they lay in. Actually, in these, you can put them in both ends if you wanted. You could put one on both ends. You see where the little notch is on both ends there, and when you do, you'll pour 3 sinkers if that's what you want to do, but you have to individually fill each one of these. When you mold these, they'll only mold 1 sinker per hole. So notice there's 2 holes on one side of this mold, 1 hole on the other side. So if you wanted to make the smallest sinker, which is this one, you would mold it just from the side that's got the smallest hole. If you wanted to make the second largest or the largest, you'd do it from the other side. And then that way you don't have to make, if you're not going to be using those other 2 size sinkers, you're not forced to waste lead on size sinkers you may not be using. Whereas, say like with this one, with the egg sinker, you have to mold a full row. You can't mold a half a row or just one. You have to mold a whole row. Okay. Now we also have egg sinkers that it'll swivel on them, and you just take a little swivel and you lay it right in that little hole right there, with one end of the swivel laying down inside the lid, down inside the cavity. You put one in each one, and when you close it up, then you just fill that orifice. And the good thing about this one, it's set up kind of like those stick weights are, is you don't have to mold sinkers you don't want. If all you want is a 2-ounce sinker, which is this one, you put your swivel in there, close it up, and fill up that one hole just for a 2-ounce sinker. It's slow if that's what you're going to be doing. If you're going to be using a lot of those sinkers, you're going to be here a while. But you know, there may be a company out there that sells molds that is only for the 2-ounce. I don't know. You could look around. There's a lot of mold makers. There's oodlings and oodlings and oodlings of companies making these molds. All of mine are Do It brand, because I like the big wide handles. They're easy to use, and they hold up. I've molded a lot of sinkers out of every one of these. I've sold a lot of sinkers out of all of them, and they just hold up forever. Now here's one. This is my arch nemesis, and I say that because it's aggravating, and that is split shots. Guys, you can make a bunch of sinkers in a hurry with this thing once you get this mold hot. But this mold's got to be hot. You got to get it hot to get the sinkers to come out, and you got to work quick. You can't fill it, shut it, or shut it and then fill it and then let it sit there. Because if you let it sit there for 15, 20 seconds, you're going to have to chisel some sinkers out of your mold. It's aggravating. And if you don't think that's so, look right in there, and you'll notice right there and there and right there, there's 3 sinkers left in there from the last time that I ran this mold that I couldn't get out just by flicking it, and I didn't have a pair of pliers handy, and I was kind of in a hurry because it was starting to rain and I was working outside, so I just left them in there. They'll come out next time I use this mold when I get it hot. But now if you let it cool off with sinkers in it, they're going to be in there till you heat it up again. Okay, so now let's talk about our ladle. Now this ladle, even though we just use this ladle just to skim with, this ladle is still important. This ladle will save your eyes and your skin and keep you possibly from getting a severe burn. Because what I like to do with my lead, I use a lot of tire weights, and I melt them down and make them into usable size pieces, which are like a hockey puck. And actually what they're made in is a muffin tin. They weigh about 2.5 pounds a piece. What you want to do when you put these in the pot is you want to let that muffin rest on top of that ladle when you go to put it in there, and let it go in slow. Don't plunk it, because it's liquid. It'll work just like water. When something hits it, it'll splatter. Except water's not 900 degrees when it hits you, so or 800 degrees, whatever it is. I can't exactly remember the melting point, but hot enough, you ain't going to enjoy it. How about that? So this ladle needs to be right here with you all the time. And another thing too, that if you're beginning to see a leak, then that ladle will also help you catch lead that may fall down on the bottom base of your pot, so that it doesn't make a big mess. Most of the time, this stuff is it's going to be okay. You know, it's going to work just fine. Sometimes you get a stop up, and when you do, you, like I said, the biggest cause of it is letting your pot get too low, or if you put too much lead in the pot at one time. After you let it run low, then it'll cool off and it may harden and heat goes up, so it's going to take it a few minutes for it to heat the rest of that up. But usually if you'll watch it and you'll kind of keep it at a sustained level as you're using it, it's not too bad. Okay, now we're going to get on to the next part of this and seeing how to set up the mold and cast a few sinkers. Okay, there is two other things I forgot to mention. You're going to need a small flat screwdriver to keep by your pot in case you need to adjust or clean out a clog with your drain valve. I'll show you how that works just in a moment. And the other thing, this is what I like to use, 2-cycle oil. You don't have to use this. You can use transmission fluid. You use just about any kind of oil. I like 2-cycle oil because a little of it goes a long way and it has a high flash point. So you don't have to worry about flaming up if something crazy happens, maybe, I don't know. But what I do with it, take a little bit, turn it right up on a rag. See, I got a little bit right there. That's enough probably to do me a whole day. I'll just rub it in. Now you can barely even see it's there. And I'll fold my rag up, set it right here beside where I'm working, and then I'll lubricate my rod that's going to be going into my mold with that. I should have this down where you can see it, but as you can see what I'm doing, I'm just rubbing oil on that rod, and I'll keep it laying right here beside me. I got the camera kind of set this way because I want you to be able to see what's going on when we're making these sinkers. Okay, now another thing important to do is I'm going to put this mold right on top of the pot. Let it sit there. Let it preheat. That'll help you a whole lot about getting good fills, and you don't have to make 4 or 5 runs with no fill and getting good sinkers on your first turn. Okay. Now the only catch to this thing is that you got to turn it the right way when you're going through your mold underneath it, and I'll show you that again. I'll move the camera here just in a second when it actually get ready to start dropping lead, so that it'll go through, that there's enough room for the whole mold to go under it. And what you want to do is you want to start with the cavity that's closest to you and work your way out. That way if there's an accident or a mistake or something happens, you're already going the right direction. You're getting away from that pot with your hand and with the mold. Okay, now I'm going to move the camera, give y'all a little bit better shot of what we're doing, and that way you won't be looking at my ugly mug so much. Hey y'all, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our material that we're going to use to create sinkers. We got a mold here heating up, which is an egg sinker mold. You can see the shape in there. They're egg sinkers. We'll show you how we're going to use that in a minute. What this thing is it was sitting on is a 20-pound pot from Lee. Now this thing will hold 20 pounds of molten lead whenever you got it filled up. It's about probably an inch from the top right now. There's probably 14, 15 pounds of lead in it, pretty close. And the stuff you see me stirring around on the top, this is slag. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this little ladle and take that off. And what all that is impurity, so we don't want that. In a sinker, it really doesn't matter, because the sinker's just what it is. It's a sinker. It's just going to be something you're going to throw in the water when you're using it, it don't got to go down a gun barrel or anything like that, but still, it'll make your process a lot simpler if you clean all that slag out. And again, it'll float right to the top. If you put something in that pot that ain't lead, it's coming to the top. And if you can see there, as I'm beginning to scrape all that stuff away, we're beginning to see a silver top to what we're doing here, instead of that bunch of slag down in it. I want to try to get as much of that out of there as you can, and like I say, it'll float on the top. You ain't got to worry about it not floating on top. You can go right down inside and scrape the sides and get that off, cleaned off real good. Just like that. Now I'll finish getting this all cleaned off, and when I come back, I'll show you the next process in getting our lead ready to use to make sinkers. All right, the next thing we're going to do, the process of cleaning off our lead pot, is we're going to flux it. What I'm going to do that with is sawdust, just regular shaving sawdust, like come off a planer. Put it right in on top of it. It's not going to be a problem. It'll smoke a little bit. It may even flame up. Just let it sit there and do its thing till everything turns black. If it flames up, you can just blow it out. It's not a big issue. But let all that wood that you put on top of there carbon completely away. You want it to get to where there's nothing left there but black. And then I'll show you what we're going to do with that. It'll take just a second. You don't want to really push it under the surface much, because there could be moisture in that, and you don't want moisture. If you put moisture under lead, what happens is you get a thermal explosion. You get an expansion of steam in that, because any of that water that's in that wood boils immediately. And then once it boils, then it makes a pocket of steam, and it will blow every bit of the lead in that pot out. So you want to let that wood stay on top until it's completely burned away. You don't want nothing left but the carbon. That's what you want. All right. I think we should, one little piece there is wanting to kind of act up, but I believe it should be pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to stir the pot. Your mama always told you don't stir the pot. Well, today we got to stir the pot. All right, and then everything pretty much that was left in there that wasn't good lead now has come to the top, and you can continue to skim that. Now, if I was doing bullets, I'd probably repeat this process maybe 3 or 4 times, depending on how the lead looked. You know, until I got the top of it looking real good and clean, I'd continue to do this. I don't care to do it a few times, but like I said, with a lead sinker, it's not all that important. Really, the only reason we're doing it now is to try to make sure there's no big chunks of anything, so that if we forget to check our pot and we run it down too low, that it gets in our spout mechanism and causes the problem that way. We don't want that. So we're good now. We're good to go on that. So now I'll set my little containers to the side over here, and now we're going to begin to talk about the items that we're going to be using to continue to make these sinkers. All right, now you can see the pot and see where we've got our mold sitting up on top of the pot. Now I'm going to put on a glove. Okay, I usually only wear one, and that'll be on the hand that's going to be dealing with the mold. It needs to be a leather glove. It needs to be something with a leather palm. It isn't a bad idea to have full leather, because if the lead touches this part of it, it's going to burn you immediately, because it's liquid and that's cloth. It's going to go through it. But most of the time, you pay attention to the warnings on the material, on the pot itself, on your molds, and you pay attention to what you're doing. And this is critical, in my opinion. Okay, number one rule anytime you're molting lead and casting anything, whether it's bullets or sinkers or whatever you're doing, put yourself in a nobody's talking to me situation. Put yourself in a position where nobody's going to distract you. There's nothing going on. It's just you and that pot and that mold in that lead. Because if a fifth character enters this story, the chances of a serious incident where somebody could get possibly killed is going to happen. And you don't think experienced people can't have an issue? There it was a gentleman. His name is Elmer Keefe. Now, if you have ever dealt with much reloading for handguns especially, you'll know that name. This guy was the pioneer in molding bullets, okay? Back in the day when there wasn't pots like this, and they melted it on stove tops with skillets and cookers. They were putting in range scrap one day, and in one of our bullet molding episodes on the channel, we'll get over to that. They were putting range scrap in to remelt it and didn't pay attention, and someone dropped a live round into a pot in the house that they were melting the lead on his wife's stove in the kitchen. And it had about 25 pounds of lead in it, and that live round went off. Luckily, nobody was seriously injured. If you read about in the life story of Elmer Keefe, that nobody was seriously injured, and nobody knows if it was him or the guy that was working with him doing it, put it in there. But my point is, that was somebody that was the founder of doing this stuff, and he made a mistake that serious. So believe me, you can make a mistake, and it don't take much. And when you do, it's a bad mistake. It's always a bad mistake. Okay, now, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our mold, which has been sitting up there. It's good and hot. Going to make sure that's turned to be parallel with the mold, okay? Going to take the mold and go all the way under here until that mold is sitting under this little port right here. See that little port? I don't know if you can see that, but you probably can. There's a little port right there, okay? And then when I lift this handle, it's going to run, it's going to run, it's going to run. It started filling up. So then I go to the next one. Then I go to the next one. Then I go to the next one, okay? Now they're all full. I'm going to let it sit here for just a second. Won't be long. I'm going to twist and pull till this rod comes out, okay? Now, rod's out. And I'm going to open the mold and tap it on the table. Close it back up. Put the rod back in it. I'm going to do the same thing again. This time I'm going to go this way to show you the difference. See how much more difference in room I have? Pull the handle. The first one fills. Move to the second one. The third one. The fourth one. Don't worry about spillage. Lead actually cleans up pretty easy because it won't hardly stick to anything but itself. Okay, I'm going to give it about 5 or 7 seconds. I'll knock that little piece off so it don't go right into me, and pull my rod. Open her up. And pop them right out. Close it back up. Stick my rod back in there. Right back in the same way. Lift. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I'm going to let it sit for a second. I'll see the top of this turn like a frosty white, and that means pretty much everything is de-liquefied. Everything is solidified now. Now I'm going to pull my rod. Now I noticed I got a little speck of lead down inside the opening mechanism right here, so I'm going to try to pop that out. That should pop right out, no problem. Alright, push on those, they'll fall right on down. And it's just wash, rinse, repeat after that. Now, there is a little kind of a deal here that I don't much like, and that's those things right there. But if you, that little wire deal right there, see that? The thing that you hang them up on your wall with. If you'll keep that back behind your handle like that, then it's not too bad. Don't get in your way and it won't cause a hang up. Okay? 1, 2, 3, forward. All right, now if you get a good run and you're not going too fast and you're not putting too much in, and again, you can adjust this, and I'm going to show you in a minute how to adjust it to make the flow go a little bit slower. Okay, I'm going to give it about 5 or 7 seconds. Wiggle and twist and pull. All right. Now open this up, dump it out. Same thing. Wash, rinse, repeat. Oh, we didn't have one come out, so that's going to cause a problem. We don't get him out of there. My little screwdriver. Get my little screwdriver. Pop him right out of there. Close the mold back up. Be careful about these inside fingers on this mold. I do this with only one glove. I don't recommend anybody else does this with only one glove. And the manufacturer won't recommend anybody else does with one glove. I've done it a lot, so I feel confident when I do it with one glove, but that's me and not you. Maybe you want to later on. I don't know. I don't recommend it. Okay, let her sit there till everything gets kind of frosty. And you can see on top of it, it'll literally look like it's got a frost on it. Twist and pull. Crack her open. Now here is the reason I don't like egg sinkers, and that's that right there, because they'll roll around. Okay, so you pretty much got the gist of what we're doing. It's a pretty simple process. As long as you take your time, do it right, and pay attention to what you're doing, and that way there's less chance of getting hurt. Now, you've got this stuff attached to the ends of some of these, like this. Okay, most of the time, twist these just a tad, and they'll pop right off. Just pop right off, and then you can take the sprue and let it right back down into the pot, and it'll melt right back. Now I don't mind dropping these in because they're usually not heavy enough to make a splash, okay, but kind of keep your hands where that if it does happen that gloved hand is blocking the splash, so that it doesn't cause a bad problem, because you can most definitely receive a horrendous burn from this stuff. So now see how that's still attached, and you just twist them a little bit. Now you can use pliers and make this a whole lot simpler, a lot easier, but I'm just showing you that you can do it without needing a pair of pliers. Just bend that apart, twist, pop right off. Twist, pop right off. Twist, pop right off. And then you got this whole big piece here, which is called the sprue. And drop it right back down in there. See, now here's another one. Just twist it, sinker pops right off. Twist it, sinker pops right off. And drop it right back, drop your sprue right back down in there. Okay. Now, if you get one that's only one sinker, a lot of times you'll have to have pliers, especially if it's sitting. No, that one came right off. Especially if they've sit long enough to cool considerably. But what do is bend it to where you got space between them, okay? Then hold the sprue in one hand and twist the sinker with the other hand. Hold the sprue in one hand and just twist that sinker with the other hand. It'll pop right off, and then you've got a completed egg sinker with a hole through it. And they're pretty simple to make. A lot of people use egg sinkers because you see them everywhere. You know, people use them. Myself personally, like I said, I'm a no-roll guy. And it's the same thing. It's an egg sinker that's flat. Okay, it's got a hole all the way through it, and it's just flat on both sides. And I like it because wherever it hits, it stays. You know, whereas you got a no-roll sinker, if you do that, drop it, it's just going to go rolling, okay? And especially when you're doing this molding stuff, that if one takes off and you don't pay attention to where it's going, and it drops down your boot or down in your hole in your britches, you're sitting here holding the knee in your pants, then you got a problem. And you can see on some of these, the first ones that we done, there's going to be some little cosmetic defects. You can see that. Doesn't matter. It's a sinker. You're not trying to win a beauty contest. It's got a hole all the way through it, and it's got weight to it. That's what you was needing. So that's what you got. Now, with these pucks, I wanted to show you how to put a puck in here using this ladle, okay? Now, you notice that ladle was down in that lead, but that lead didn't stick to it. You know why? Because it's the same temperature as the lead. If something is the same temperature as the lead, then it won't stick. Lead won't stick to it. Okay, but we're going to take this puck. I'm going to set it on that ladle. Okay, and then I'm going to let it down in there slowly. And in just a minute or so, that'll be gone. It'll melt that puck completely up. And we can do it again. Do it a couple times here. Put the ladle right there against the edge of the pot. Put the puck right in it, okay, and just let it glide down in there. All right, we'll do one more. Let's do this big one. All right, we'll do this big guy. Wipe him off because he's been sitting in storage. I have a bunch of these already pre-made up, and they set, waiting to be used. All right, let's take that big, set it right on top of that ladle, and let it down in there. Now the reason that I'm remelting these, because I'm not going to make any more sinkers. That's all we needed to see to get the sinkers made. It's they say it's a lot better for your pot if you don't leave it empty. That if you leave it at least half full. I like to leave mine about 1 inch from the top. Make sure everything in it's completely melted. And then what I do is I go around and I pick up all my. Now, if you notice this big piece right here, it was where we had oversprue. It just lifts right off because, again, like I said, lead won't hardly stick to anything except itself. So we can pick all that up. It's real easy to clean that up. I can roll these sinkers away. I can get all the little pieces of lead that we had here laying around so we don't got no lead contamination to worry about. Now people will tell you gotta wear a mask, man, you gotta have a big vapor mask while you're doing that and all that stuff. Let me tell you something. What is dangerous to human beings is lead dust or lead vapors. Now, the thing that everybody doesn't know, and it is kind of got everybody scared to death, is what exactly is, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off. What exactly is the temperature in which you make lead vapor? Well, it's way beyond. You would melt this pot before you would get it to that point. Okay, you can't get lead hot enough in a pot that you're going to buy anywhere that I've ever heard of that would get it hot enough to make lead vapor. Now, if it was making lead vapor and you couldn't get some kind of a really good respirator system, you'd probably kill you pretty quick. And dust, if there was dust, then you would have that problem as well. You're not going to produce any dust doing this, okay? Now, I suggest that when you're sorting out your wheel weights and dealing with those, yes, do that. You don't need a respirator, but I do suggest you get a good 3M mask, one like everybody said you needed when COVID was real bad. Get you one of those. Make sure you wear it when you're doing your wheel weights and when you're sorting them and that sort of thing. Now, to get back to the last thing we was going to talk about, I'm going to put my ladle under this spout. But the use of the screwdriver, not only can you use it to pop out a stubborn sinker that you may have molded, but on top of this, right up here, there's a threaded rod that's slotted for a screwdriver, and you can turn that to adjust the amount of flow that'll come out. The farther you adjust it, like if I turn it this way, almost all the way, then I'll barely at all get any. It takes a long time for it to run full, okay? But now, if I run it the other way, okay, and I turn this screw the other way, then it allows that little valve to turn the other way really quickly. And it'll even get to the point to where you can't stop it, okay? It'll do what it just did then, and it'll overflow, all right? And that's what you don't want. So you want to make sure that that thing is adjusted to a suitable speed that you can fill up your mold, so it's going to be fast enough that it doesn't get cold before you fill it. Especially now, this is critical when you're doing bullets, not so much when you're doing sinkers, because again, you're not worried about cosmetic stuff. With when you're casting bullets, and we'll get to that later on when I do a video on casting bullets, they got to be really good. They got to be just perfect, okay? Because you want everything that's going to seal the gases good in your barrel and all that stuff, and help you with your accuracy and doesn't cause a feeding problem. But when you're making these sinkers, you want it to run as fast as you can deal with it, okay? You don't want to try to make it go faster than you can work it, but you want to make it fast enough to where it'll keep you a pretty good production speed going. And like I say, once you get used to that wiggle and pull, and knowing about how long you need to do that, and you learning to watch your sprue, and you get that adjusted just right to where you like it, you can roll some sinkers out. Unless you're doing the dreaded split shot, and I'm just going to tell you, you'll get good enough to where you can do it, and it's not an issue, but you'll never enjoy it, I don't think. They're really hard to do. They're really. I've had some people order like 100 pounds of split shots that done a lot of crappie and bluegill fishing. Yeah, I did them. I didn't like it. But anyway, for catfishermen, we are usually about two things. We are about catching fish, and we are about not having to spend any more money doing it than we have to. And this is the way you can do it, as long as you do it safely, and as long as you practice safe operation standards. Wear protective gear, gloves. Again, I only wear one, but I've been doing this for a long time. Not to say I can't make a mistake, but I've learned a lot doing it, and I've made mistakes, and I feel confident in what I'm doing, and probably sometime you will too. But I suggest you wear 2 gloves no matter what, if you think you're the best in the world. I get a little cocky sometimes, and sometimes I pay the price for that, but that's just me. Make sure you wear those. Glasses. Make sure you wear glasses. Make sure they are shatterproof, and mine are. Make sure that you're in an area that's well lit and well ventilated. I am in an area that has ventilation in the ceiling, that air's continuously flowing in and out, and I'm in an area that's well lit. Make 100% sure you are the only person involved in the operation and nobody else is around. It's a good time to do this when the kids are in school, and if your wife works and she's gone to work and you can find time to be home and do this, that's a good time to do it. If not, wait till about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Tell everybody, say, hey, I'm going out to my utility shed, or I'm going to the basement, or wherever I go to make my sinkers. I'll be back in a little while. Don't want nobody to bother me. You can be nice about it. Tell people what you need, because that's what'll make it safe. Guys, you could make this little pile of sinkers that's right here. If you went to Walmart and bought those, probably looking at $30. I made those with about 50 cents worth of wheel weights. Well, I gave $30 for a bucket of wheel weights. It was all probably 90% lead that weighed 130 pounds. So you figure out how many sinkers you can make. I mean, and it may not pay you to buy this pot and all these molds, because you might not need all those molds. I have a bunch more because I make sinkers for folks. But if you fish, more than likely you know a lot of people other than you that fish. And if you say, hey, guess what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start making catfishing sinkers. You ain't going to become Donald Trump making catfishing sinkers, but you very well might make a buck. Enough to maybe pay for your pot and pay for your lead. Now, it is getting harder to get lead. You know, I tell people all the time that if you know somebody that's got an old tire shop and they've got old lead wheel weights sitting around and they'll let you buy them or they'll give them to you, take them. Because they're going to get harder and harder and harder to find. And I find myself, when I'm bank fishing, I usually keep a pair of scissors or a good sharp knife in my pocket so that if in the rocks or in the tree limbs and stuff, if I see sinkers hanging around, I'll cut them down. And I'll bring them home and I'll throw them in a bucket, you know, and then the next time I get ready to start making sinkers, I'll throw them in there. Most of the time in my wheel weights, what I use to make sinkers with are the stick-on wheel weights because they're pure lead. You really don't want to use those unless you're making musket balls when you're making bullets. I use regular drive-on wheel weights because they have a higher Burnell hardness, and that's what you want with the bullets. With the type of shooting I do, when I load bullets for handguns or a rifle, I want about anywhere from 15 to 19 Burnell hardness. And if you make these sinkers with that pure lead, those stick-on weights, it's only going to be about 10 or 11. So you would have to add 10 and antimony and get the mixture set up to get you up to the hardness you want. But you don't need that with sinkers. It doesn't, unless you're trying to kill the fish with the sinker. You don't really need it. But like I said, if you do this responsibly and just buy the stuff that you need, or if you want to get into it, you can buy a lot of these molds. These molds aren't very expensive. They're like 20 bucks a piece. From Do It, you can get them off of Amazon really cheap. You can get them off of eBay really cheap. A lot of times you'll find guys that's got several molds that decided to get out, that they might sell you a pot and a bunch of molds and everything. The pot, I bought mine a new one for a reason. I could have bought a used one. I saw several of them online, but I bought a new one for a reason because I didn't know how that one had been treated. If it ever had zinc in it, you don't want one if it's ever had zinc in it because the bottom is doomed. You'll be sitting here working one day and all of a sudden it'll be start pouring out and you just can't stop it because it will eat the bottom. Because the zinc is reactive to the kind of metal that they use to make these pots out of, and it will cause it to just eat right through it and it'll ruin it. So I bought my pot. I think I got my pot from Midway, and I want to think I gave $129 for it at Christmas time. Now they make a smaller version, it's a 10-pound, and it's only like $100, or like 89 maybe was at Christmas time. But I got like $25 off, I think, at Christmas time on this one, and it's a 20-pound. And like if you're making bullets, I cast a lot of 9mm. You, on one pot of lead, man, you can make a lot. I don't know how many, I've never counted them, but you can make a lot of bullets with one pot. You figure how many, just the bullets it would take to make 20 pounds. And I can sit down, once I get my mold up to running, the temperature I like it, and nobody's bothering me, and I'm focused in on what I'm doing, I can probably make, in an hour's time, I would say it'd be a safe bet 75 pounds of bullets, because I mean the molds I've got for 9mm make 8 at a time, or no, I'm sorry, 6 at a time, and it's basically every 8 seconds, 10 seconds, you're filling that thing back up. Once you get rhythms, you get everything set up right. Now, I mean, I've got stuff kind of out of position and a little higher than I would do it on a normal time of molding, because I like to keep the pot low and between my legs, and I'm kind of sitting right up close to it so that there's less chance of a tip over or a big splash or something like that, and I can keep an eye on my amount of lead that I've got in the pot. And I set it up this way a little bit so it'd be easier to see with the camera, and so you could see what was going on and what was happening where. But it's not a big process, and like I say, you could save yourself a lot of money with sinkers, and even if you want to do bullets. But you could for sure make yourself some money if you know a lot of guys that catfish, and if you catfish, you use sinkers, you go through them. Now another thing that I do also that I'm going to make a video coming out pretty soon about is drifting weights. Okay, now I make drifting weights using PEX, and I'll mold. I don't think the mold is in here. Buckshot. And the mold I've got, you can fill it up and it'll run 24 buckshot in one fill. And then I'll use the buckshot, drop down in plastic line like PEX, until I put the amount of weight I want in it. Then I'll fill the rest of that with, well, I'll show you the whole process. But anyway, I use it for that too. And those things are crazy popular right now because they work. And there's like $6 for a pretty decent one if you get them off the internet. And you can make them a lot cheaper than that, and you can sell them to your buddies. If you go around, if you know people that do construction or plumbing or stuff, and they come up with little short scrap pieces of PEX or stuff like that, then you can really come up with a way to offset the price of what you got to do. You know, it's all about saving money so you can have fun. So that's about all I've got for this one, guys. I appreciate it, and just keep an eye out for upcoming videos on stuff like this. And like I say, we're going to be coming out real soon with one about drifting weights, a couple different styles to show you how you can make those real cheap. And if it might be something, like I said, that you can make a little money doing. And if you can make a little money doing it so that you can offset your cost of going fishing, then you've accomplished something that everybody that's in your family is going to appreciate, your wife's going to appreciate, you're going to appreciate it, because you're going to be able to buy more stuff for yourself. Well, I appreciate you watching. It's the Fat Man Outdoors. I'm the Fat Man, and I'm gone. Hey guys, if you liked the video, hit subscribe. Don't forget to click that bell so you get notifications the next time we put out a video. Appreciate you. It's the Fat Man. I'm gone.